The twin suns of Kepler 442b, were setting behind the jagged Crimson Mountains when Lewis Harker first heard the crash. The sound tore through the valley like thunder, a screaming descent followed by the unmistakable crunch of metal against stone. He dropped the plasma welder he'd been using to repair his homestead's water filtration system and sprinted toward the ridge, his military instincts overriding 8 years of peaceful retirement. Smoke rose in thick black columns from beyond the eastern slope. Lewis's boots pounded against the rust-colored soil as memories he tried to bury surged back, memories of burning ships, dying comrades, and the endless war against the Krath dominion that had consumed his youth. His hand instinctively reached for a sidearm that wasn't there anymore. He'd left that life behind when he'd claimed this plot of land on the frontier, determined to live out his days in solitude. But old habits died hard. The crash site was worse than he'd expected. A sleek vessel, no bigger than an atmospheric shuttle, lay broken across the ravine like a child's discarded toy. The hull bore markings Lewis recognized, Velkari script, angular and precise. The ship belonged to the Coalition, humanity's uneasy allies in the war that had officially ended 3 years ago. Officially. Lewis knew better. The frontier worlds were still plagued by Krath raiders and pirates who refused to accept the armistice. He approached cautiously, scanning for threats. The ship's emergency beacon pulsed weakly, casting blue light across the wreckage. That's when he saw her. The pilot had been thrown clear of the cockpit, her slender form crumpled against a boulder 15 meters from the impact site. She was Velkari. That much was obvious from her distinctive features. Luminescent skin that shifted between deep purple and silver, elongated limbs built for grace rather than power, and the characteristic cranial ridges that marked her species. Her flight suit was torn and scorched, dark fluid seeping from wounds across her torso and left leg. But it was the creature beside her that made Lewis freeze. A tracking cat. He'd heard stories about them but never seen one up close. The creature was roughly the size of a Terran mountain lion, but there the similarity ended. Its body was covered in bioluminescent scales that flickered weakly, and 6 legs supported a muscular frame designed for both speed and endurance. Its head bore 4 eyes, 2 forward-facing for hunting, 2 on the sides for awareness. Intelligence gleamed in those eyes, along with pain. Deep gashes crossed its flank, and one of its forelegs bent at an unnatural angle. The cat's head lifted as Lewis approached, a low growl rumbling from its throat. It positioned itself between Lewis and the unconscious pilot, despite its obvious injuries. "Easy," Lewis murmured, raising his hand slowly. "I'm not your enemy." The cat's scales flashed amber, a warning. Lewis had learned enough about Coalition species during the war to know that Velkari tracking cats were bonded to their pilots, sharing a neural link that made them extensions of each other. If the pilot died, the cat would likely follow. If the cat perceived him as a threat, it would attack despite its wounds, and they'd all die in this forsaken ravine. Lewis lowered himself to one knee, maintaining eye contact with the creature. "Your pilot needs help. You both do. I have medical supplies at my homestead, not Coalition tech, but human medicine has patched up Velkari before. Let me help." The cat's growl deepened. Its scales shifted through colors, amber to red to a sickly yellow. Lewis recognized the signs of a neural link under stress. The pilot must be in critical condition for the cat to be this agitated. Then the pilot stirred. Her eyes fluttered open, large, almond-shaped, and the color of liquid gold. They focused on Lewis with difficulty, and her lips moved, forming words in accented English. "Tor, protect." The cat's name, Lewis realized. The creature's scales immediately shifted to a calmer blue-green, and its posture relaxed fractionally. "I'm Lewis," he said, addressing both of them. "Former Alliance Marine medical training. Your ship went down hard. I can help, but we need to move. This smoke will draw scavengers, maybe worse." The pilot's golden eyes studied him for a long moment. Lewis could see her making calculations, assessing threat levels even while bleeding out. Finally, She gave the barest nod. "Anna," she whispered. "Lieutenant, Anna Velshiri Coalition, Scout Corps." "Anna," Lewis repeated, committing it to memory. "Can you walk?" No, the admission seemed to cost her. Leg fractured, ribs punctured. Lewis quickly assessed the situation. The homestead was 2 kilometers away, too far to carry both an injured Velkari and a tracking cat. But his old military transport was parked just beyond the ridge, a rugged all-terrain vehicle he'd kept maintained out of habit. "I'm going to get my transport," he told Anna. "5 minutes, maybe less. Tor stays with you," agreed. Anna's hand reached out weakly, fingers brushing against Tor's scales. The cat's head lowered, and Lewis saw something pass between them, that silent communication that came from their neural bond. After a moment, Anna nodded again. Lewis ran. The transport roared to life on the first try, its fusion engine humming with the reliability of military-grade engineering. Lewis pushed it hard across the uneven terrain, his mind racing through medical protocols he'd learned 2 decades ago. Velkari physiology was different from human. Their cardiovascular system operated on a dual-chamber principle, and they required higher oxygen saturation. The medical kit in his homestead had universal coalition adapters, but whether they'd be enough for injuries this severe. He couldn't think about that. Years of war had taught him to focus on the problem in front of him, not the ones he couldn't control. When he returned to the crash site, Tor was lying beside Anna, the cat's body curved protectively around her. Anna's breathing had become shallow, and her luminescent skin had faded to a dull gray, a bad sign. "Tor," Lewis called out firmly, "I need you to trust me." The cat's 4 eyes fixed on him, and for a heartbeat, Lewis saw the intelligence there, the calculations, the fear, the desperate hope. Then Tor shifted, allowing Lewis access to Anna. Working quickly, Lewis activated the transport's medical bay, a compact emergency station built into the rear compartment. He'd upgraded it over the years, adding coalition-compatible equipment salvaged from decommissioned bases. Now he was grateful for his paranoia. He lifted Anna as gently as possible. She was lighter than a human, her bones hollow like a bird's to facilitate low-gravity maneuvering. Every movement made her gasp in pain, but she didn't cry out. Stoic, like all coalition soldiers Lewis had known. Tor limped after them, struggling to jump into the transport on 3 working legs. Lewis helped hoist the massive cat inside, feeling the creature's muscles tense beneath his hands. Up close, he could see the damage, deep cuts that revealed biomechanical implants beneath the scales, enhancements that made tracking cats the perfect companions for scout pilots. The ride back to the homestead was agonizing. Every bump in the terrain drew pained sounds from Anna, and Tor's scales flickered erratically. Lewis pushed the transport as fast as he dared, his jaw clenched. The homestead's medical bay was more sophisticated than most frontier settlements could boast. Lewis had spent years setting it up, driven by nightmares of being injured with no help for light years. Now it would serve a different purpose. He carried Anna inside first, placing her on the primary medical platform. The diagnostic systems came online immediately, holographic displays materializing in the air above her. The readouts were grim: punctured lung cavity, fractured femur, severe hemorrhaging, and neural shock from the crash. "Tor," Lewis said, gesturing to the secondary platform. "I need to stabilize her first, then I'll treat you. Understand?" The cat's scales pulsed, reluctant acknowledgement. It settled onto the platform, never taking its eyes off Anna. Lewis's hands moved with practiced efficiency. He initiated the universal blood synthesis protocol, flooding Anna's system with oxygen-enriched plasma compatible with Velkari biology. Next came the bone stabilizer, a nanite injection that would knit her fractured leg from within. The punctured lung was trickier. He had to manually seal it using a biogel applicator, working through a small incision while monitoring her oxygen levels. Hours passed. Lewis fell into the rhythm of combat medicine, that strange state where time compressed and expanded simultaneously. He'd done this before, countless times during the war, but never in the quiet of his own home. Never without the sound of explosions in the background, without the pressure of incoming wounded. Anna remained unconscious throughout, her body's natural healing responses enhanced by the medical technology. Velkari were resilient, evolved on a high-radiation world. Their cellular repair mechanisms were more robust than human. That would work in her favor. When Anna's vitals finally stabilized, Lewis turned his attention to Tor. The tracking cat watched him approach with wary eyes, but didn't resist when Lewis began treating its wounds. The damaged foreleg required a temporary splint. Lewis fabricated one using the homestead's 3D printer, designing it to account for the cat's unique anatomy. The gashes across Tor's flank were deep but clean. Lewis applied regenerative patches that would accelerate healing. As he worked, Lewis found himself talking to the creature. "You're a brave one, aren't you? Protecting her even when you could barely stand. I knew soldiers like that, the best kind." Tor's scales shifted to a warm amber, and Lewis could have sworn the cat understood every word. Dawn broke over Kepler 442b, painting the sky in shades of orange and crimson. Lewis sat in his monitoring station, watching the medical displays with exhausted eyes. He'd been awake for 36 hours straight, but training kept him alert. Anna stirred first. Her eyes opened slowly, confusion flickering across her features before memory returned. She tried to sit up, and Lewis was beside her in an instant. "Easy," he said. "Your lungs sealed, but the nanites need another 12 hours to complete the bone repair. You're not going anywhere yet." Anna's golden eyes found his face, studying him with renewed intensity. "You saved us." "Did what anyone would do." "No," her voice was stronger now, though still weak. "Not anyone. I've been in coalition service for 7 cycles. I know how humans are viewed: aggressive, territorial, unpredictable." She paused, her gaze shifting to where Tor lay resting on the adjacent platform. "But you risked yourself for aliens. Why?" Lewis was quiet for a long moment. Memories surfaced. Of Velkari soldiers fighting alongside his unit on Proxima Station, of a coalition medic who'd pulled him from a burning bunker, of the strange kinship that had formed between species in the crucible of war. "Because I remember what it was like," he finally said. "Being wounded, alone, hoping someone would care enough to help. I swore if I ever got the chance, I'd be that someone." Anna's expression softened. "You were Alliance Marine. I saw the scars on your hands, plasma burns. Battle on Proxima Station." "Yeah, 4th Wave, you." "Scout Corps, but I was there too, different sector." She closed her eyes briefly. "Small galaxy." Lewis smiled faintly. "Smaller than we think." A low rumble drew their attention. Tor had awakened, and the cat's scales blazed with brilliant blue-green light, the color of contentment and trust. The creature rose carefully on its splinted leg and limped over to Anna's platform. She reached out, fingers running along Tor's scales, and Lewis saw tears form in her golden eyes. "Thank you," she whispered, "for both of us." Over the following days, Lewis's homestead transformed. What had been a solitary refuge became something else, a temporary sanctuary for healing. Anna recovered faster than human physiology would have allowed, the Velkari resilience asserting itself. Tor mended too, the tracking cat's biomechanical enhancements accelerating tissue regeneration. Lewis found himself enjoying the company. He and Anna would sit on the homestead's observation deck as the twin suns set, sharing stories of the war, of home worlds neither might see again, of the strange peace that had settled over the frontier. "My ship's memory core survived," Anna said one evening. "I managed to access it today. I was tracking Krath raiders, a cell operating near the outer rim. They ambushed me." "Are they still a threat?" Lewis asked, his old instincts stirring. "Unknown. My distress beacon was damaged in the crash. Coalition won't know where I went down. She looked at him. But you have a long-range transmitter, I saw it. I do, Lewis hesitated. You could call for extraction, be back with your unit within a week. Anna was quiet, her fingers absently stroking Tor's scales. The cat lay between them, scales pulsing with peaceful light. Or, Lewis continued, you could stay a while longer. Help me track those raiders. 2 veterans and a tracking cat, we might actually accomplish something out here. Anna turned to him, surprise evident in her expression. You would do this, risk involvement in coalition affairs. The frontier doesn't care about coalition or alliance, Lewis said. Out here, we're all just trying to survive, and those raiders are everyone's problem. A slow smile spread across Anna's face, the first genuine one Lewis had seen from her. Then I accept, on one condition. What's that? You teach me how humans brew that terrible coffee you drink every morning. If I'm staying, I need to understand your species' masochistic beverage choices. Lewis laughed, the sound echoing across the quiet valley. Deal. Tor's scales blazed brilliant gold, and in that moment, the 3 of them, human veteran, alien pilot, and wounded tracking cat, formed an unlikely alliance that would become legend on the frontier worlds. The war had ended, but their story was just beginning. The end.